hearty welcome to one and all. This is episode 176 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Saturday evening here with me in New York. If you're checking out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. So it's actually been 23 episodes since I have done the best movie you've never seen, or I should say since I did an episode from that series. So we're going to make episode 176 the 16th entry in our ongoing series of the best movie you've never seen. And the movie that I will be focusing on is the second film starring Oscar winner William Hurt to make this particular series of the best movie you've never seen. The first one was the classic film noir mystery that William Hurt made with Kathleen Turner, Body Heat, in 1981. That was a movie set in a never-ending Florida heat wave where nobody seems to have air conditioning. Everybody is just sweating to death 100% of the time. When the temperature rises, the suspense flies, or something like that. But today's movie is one of my favorites, a really wonderful, touching, beautifully acted film called The Doctor. And it was released in the very competitive summer movie season of 1991. So to give you a little perspective, The Doctor opened with Terminator 2 still absolutely tearing up the domestic box office. And Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was still in theaters. Naked Gun 2.5 was still in theaters. I believe Hot Shots with Charlie Sheen. But The Doctor was not a large budget. The filmmaker, Randa Haynes, was more of an independent. She had more of an independent flavor than a big studio flavor. So the movie came out, and I remember my dad, may he rest in peace, he saw it with his lady friend the weekend that it opened. He had been a William Hurt fan. He had liked movies such as Broadcast News and Accidental Tourist. He thought was great. He loved Body Heat, Big Chill, all of these movies right in my dad's wheelhouse. And I don't know if he had read a review in New York Magazine of The Doctor, but somehow, again, in the pre-internet, not even the early age of the internet, the Stone Ages, but in the Stone Ages before there was internet connection, before anybody got any percentage of their information online, this movie was somehow on his radar. I don't know if I just assumed that he read a review or he saw something on TV because it hadn't opened yet and he was excited to see it. So he saw it the Saturday of the opening weekend. Now that I'm thinking about it, Dad would have been younger at that point than I am now. He would have still been 48. Jesus. Oof. It's really amazing when you get to be a certain age and you start calculating when, well, yeah, my dad was really old. No, he wasn't. Shut up. But Dad loved it. He said, you got to see this movie, Jer. And I was a kid. I was 17. I was miserable, but he's like, this is so good. It's such a great movie. I didn't see it in theaters. I had seen Terminator 2 twice. We had gone to see Terminator 2 when I returned from Florida. I saw that movie with his father, Grandpa Nat. And then when I got back to New York, we saw Terminator 2 at the old Syosset, the Oneplex Theater near where, it's called Crossways Park, but where Jericho Turnpike, you get off Jericho Turnpike to go onto Route 135 for you Long Islanders. It's now a gym. It was a movie theater. It's an Equinox now. So I guess, I went to the movies a bunch of times that summer now that I'm thinking about it. But I didn't see The Doctor until it premiered on, I want to say, Showtime. And I really liked it. Even though I was still a little bit of a kind of pain in the ass, I was always complaining. By the time I saw the movie, it was at least a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe even more. I had started to get my head together and taken a more evolved viewpoint towards a lot of things. I was less quick to just automatically dismiss things that maybe were a little bit challenging or somehow offended my delicate sensibilities, if in fact that was even a thing for me. The film is, as I said, very well acted. And there was just something about it that spoke to me. Even though I had not had any major medical crises in my life, I had seen my dad go through some pretty heavy stuff when he wasn't very old. Nothing life-threatening, but heavy stuff nevertheless. And I hadn't really thought about something that is known as bedside manner. It's not something that I really pondered. I didn't think in terms of, well, this doctor is very kind and he's empathetic, and this one isn't. None of that ever landed. But watching this movie, I started to see the medical profession in a different way. And I realized that such things as bedside manner and being a certain way with patients when they're scared is actually a huge part of doctoring. So in the world of this film, William Hurt, who was just knocking out one great performance after another. And he's a guy who I know some people never liked him. Unfortunately, he passed. He was in his early 70s. He passed a couple of years ago. And for you youngins out there, he played General Ross in the Avengers movies. Not the one, not the Eric Bana Hulk film, but from Tony Stark forward. He's the guy with the kind of blondish hair and the heavy mustache. He was presumably playing slightly younger than his actual age at the time. But that's the actor I'm talking about, William Hurt. And Hurt just, he won the Best Actor for A Kiss of the Spider Woman, the Oscar. Then he was nominated the next year for Children of a Lesser God. Could have won, didn't win, but his co-star Marlee Matlin won Best Actress. Then the year after that, he was nominated again for Broadcast News. Didn't win, but 3 consecutive Best Actor nominations, including one win, is absurd. We're talking Tom Hanks territory. Although Hanks probably should have been up for something for League of Their Own, and love him in Apollo 13. But I don't think Hanks got nominated for Apollo 13. Anyway, point is, nominated for 3 consecutive Best Actor awards, and then many people consider his next film, The Accidental Tourist, which I mentioned at the beginning of this, they think that that's his best performance. He didn't get nominated for that. He was just knocking him out of the park. And The Doctor, for me, is the best performance that I've ever seen and that I ever saw him give in a movie. Because his character makes such a turn and has an evolution that is never less than believable and plausible given the events of the story. There are no narrative cheats. There are no screenwriter tricks to kind of skip steps. The journey of Jack McKee, his character, is beautiful, heart-wrenching at times, but so very human. And so when we meet Jack McKee, he's married. The great actress Christine Lottie plays his wife, and they have a son. He's so focused on work and his job as a surgeon, he's a bit disconnected. He's not cruel. He's not like presented as an asshole, but he's presented as a guy who makes an incredible living. He's driving a new, Mercedes convertible, real hot car, a little, almost like a Matchbox kind of car. And he's great at his job. Well, he's a great surgeon. He's not necessarily that great of a doctor because we see him not make mistakes, but we see him with patients and he's not relating to them in the way that as an older person, I would want to see a doctor talk to somebody who's afraid they're going to die. They're not that old. They think they're going to die. Doc, reassure them. Don't make jokes about, I'm not sure we have the right heart. He doesn't say that, but he says stuff like that. He's very sarcastic, and he just doesn't come across that well. He's a bit of an ass, to be honest. And that portion of the movie where William Hurt is that guy, where he is the brilliant surgeon who needs, you hate to say it, he needs a bit of a comeuppance. Nothing truly horrendous. We don't want the guy to die. But he's such a young man, and he presumably has decades to go as a heart surgeon, as a cardiologist, as a specialist, he needs a little humility. It's okay to know that you're brilliant and you're funny, but you don't have to scare your patients. It's okay to show a little vulnerability with your patients. So what ends up happening is Jack McKee, he starts to get a little bit of a funny feeling in his throat. It's not terrible. He's got a little bit of a tickle, and he thinks it's, standard. I probably have a throat infection. Maybe it's a strange form of strep, whatever he goes through. But it persists. And he gets checked out by a specialist, a vocal specialist. And to his shock, he has cancer. He has throat cancer. And he then goes on a very harrowing odyssey of experiencing what the average person who has a health crisis experiences. Now, yes, he has money. He has good health care. This is, 30 some years ago. But the red tape, the difficulty seeing the specialist you want to see, the difficulty having your appointments go off on time, he absorbs all of this nonsense that he never really thought about because he didn't have to. He was high flying. He's doing the great work of a surgeon, and he doesn't really give a shit if his patients have to sit for an hour and a half. No, he doesn't say that, but it's not something that he would have been aware of. He wouldn't have said, you know what? I got to see this guy now because he looks like he's freaked out. Send him in. No. But now that he's on the other side, he keeps trying to pull rank and nobody on any other floor gives a shit. Say, listen, I'm Dr. McKee. I'm the finest surgeon in this hospital. You're on the 8th floor, doctor. You're going to wait your turn like everyone else. So him pulling rank he's not really even doing it for a good reason. He's doing it because he doesn't want to wait. He doesn't want to be lumped in and treated like the other patients. So even as his health declines and he's scared for his future, he's still not getting it. He's not getting it yet because he is young and he knows he's calculated. He knows it's likely that he's going to survive. It's just a question of what will that mean? Because there are certain kinds of treatments that will be non-invasive, which would be preferable, where if those treatments work, he's not going to lose the power of speech. But then if things get a little bit more dicey, then you say, I want to cut out the tumor. Okay, but then you might lose the power of speech forever. And so with all of this swirling, and he's still not connecting properly with his wife and his kid, he meets a cancer patient played beautifully by Elizabeth Perkins a couple of years after she was so strong in Big opposite Tom Hanks. And his friendship with her, she's a terminal cancer patient. And he tries to boost her spirits by giving her hope and telling stories of people he knows of who had similar cancers and, were able to have a better quality of life and maybe even go into remission. Now, that's kind of not something that would have landed when I was a kid, but it's not so much that in his mind, he's not filling her with false hope. He's trying to give her something good, something positive. He's starting to get it. He's starting to understand. I would never treat this woman. This is not my field. She doesn't have heart issues. This is oncology. This is a woman who's dying of cancer. He's not a specialist. He knows obviously a decent amount, but this is not his field. So when he starts talking about people getting certain kinds of treatments, he kind of knows, but he's not really giving an expert opinion the way it would if a cardiologist, if he had a heart issue and he was discussing that with somebody. But he persists in his friendship with her. And in many ways, he's there to comfort her in her final days. And we don't realize that as we're seeing the film, that she's there so that he can find humility, so that he can grow and change. And it's not at her expense, but she's there so that he can understand just how good he has it even now. You're so young, Doc. You're going to get better one way or the other. You may be compromised, but you're not going to die from this. You need to be better and do better. And he starts to evolve. He slowly becomes a better doctor. But he can't really get to that yet until he's in the clear. And he starts to make a greater effort with his wife, the family, starts taking a breath, and starts seeing there are certain situations that he's been involved with. One of his partners gets sued, and partner fucked up. The guy screwed up. So the old Jack would have just poo-pooed it and tried to sweep it under the rug. But the new Jack, he's not going to go for that. If this patient asks him for help, he's not going to shun the guy because there's a lawsuit. His heart is now, he's going to do the right thing. This guy's taking us to court. Okay? Your neck is on the fucking line too. Yeah, I know. Oh, I didn't mean that. Yeah, I know you didn't mean that. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. It wouldn't be much of a movie if the whole point of the story was that this kind of high and mighty, condescending ass of a doctor just dies from cancer. That wouldn't be much of a movie. But the movie is based on a book, a true life story of a doctor who developed cancer and recovered. And the name of the book was A Dose of My Own Medicine. And just that title gives you an idea of where this story goes. And the turns it takes, it doesn't always do what you're expecting it to do. But the way that William Hurt plays the character as he slowly changes from brilliant surgeon to brilliant surgeon and wonderful doctor. And by the end of the movie, he would have been grateful. He would have been grateful to not die. He would have been grateful to not permanently lose the power of speech, regardless of whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, whether he just makes a partial evolution that he's a little bit less of an asshole, or if, no, he is now somebody who gets it. That's how he would come across, as somebody with grace, with humility, with an understanding. I'm really lucky, and I need to act it going forward. No backsliding, no come to Jesus moment, and then 2 minutes later, fuck that. He's grateful, and he uses that to continue to become a better doctor. Even something as seemingly insignificant as when a heart transplant patient is put under, whispering in the man's ear, "It's a beautiful heart, Arturo. You're going to live a long life when this is over." It's not something he ever would have conceived of. He would have been joking and making light of the surgery that was about to happen. One of the really amazing moments in the movie, this I'm going to have to spoil, it comes near the end. It's not like a plot point. But one thing that medical students, at least at this time, I don't know how it is now, they don't necessarily, or at the time of the movie, they didn't have to themselves. They learn how to treat patients. We know all kinds of different applications. In a cardiac rotation, you learn a bunch of treatments that you might put forth for your patients. Neurology, same thing. Orthopedic, same thing. Whatever it is. Pediatrics, internal medicine. There are so many different treatment methods that young doctors have to master. Some of the tests are very uncomfortable. Some of the methods that are used are exceedingly humiliating, painful, whatever. In the world of this film, given what he's experienced on the other side of it as a patient, having moments of humiliation, having to go through batteries of tests, many of which were probably not necessary, but the doctor just decided to do it because it's cool, or I just want to see how this turns out, without thinking, this guy's going to be in fucking agony. Is it really that important? You don't need to do this particular test. So what Jack McKee does with his residents, he doesn't do this out of spite. He doesn't do it out of, oh, I'm just going to be a dick. He does it to make them better doctors. He basically takes them off the wards. He takes them off the floors, and he turns them into hospital patients for a number of days. And they will undergo batteries of tests. Every possible discipline, field of medicine that these young doctors, as whether they're internal medicine specialists or whatever it might be, that they will one day have to prescribe, that they will have to recommend for their patients. He wants them to know exactly what they are going to be doing. He wants them to experience it, so that if there are a couple of things where one is 3 hours of torture and the other, which is basically the same thing, is no torture, they're going to take the no torture option. And just the way he says to them, he has almost a paternal smile. And he's maybe supposed to be in his mid-40s, maybe. He might even be presented as younger. William Hurt at the time of the movie, I think, was probably 42 or 43, if that. So he's not that much older than the residents. He's maybe 10, 12 years tops. And some of the residents are probably well into their 30s. But when the residents get done freaking out over, holy shit, we're not going to be going home. We're going to be living as hospital patients. What the fuck? You know, there's no cell phone for them to Google if this is acceptable or are we being abused. When they stop freaking out, they're not happy about it. But just the way William Hurt says, you are no longer doctors. You are now hospital patients. Good luck, and I'll see you on my rounds. Good luck, and I'll see you on my rounds. Hurt's performance is so good. I remember arguing about this. There was a guy, it was a guy named Kenny, not my friend Kenny who had the podcast, but there was another gentleman named Kenny, and he saw a lot of William Hurt movies, and he just hated him. He saw A History of Violence in 2005. We both saw it. He liked the movie. He said, I can't get past the fact I hate William Hurt. I've hated him in every movie. Did you ever see The Doctor? No. I don't think he ever saw The Doctor. I said, well, for somebody who doesn't like him, I think that's the one movie, because the way his character gets a comeuppance, it might land a little differently. It might hit you a little differently. I don't know if he ever ended up seeing the movie. Probably not. He was just so frustrated. He ruined The Big Chill. No, he didn't. I didn't like broadcast news. Fine. Not for everyone. What can I say? There was a lot of talk when the film came out that William Hurt was going to get another Oscar nomination. And he had done a lot of different things. He did a black comedy, I Love You to Death, with Kevin Kline, Keanu Reeves, among others, which it's kind of a culty black comedy. I know there are certain people that absolutely adore that movie. Didn't do that well at the box office, got sort of trashed by critics. He did a movie with Wim Wenders, Until the End of the World, the same year as The Doctor. I didn't see that. That got a lot of acclaim. But there was chatter that William Hurt should get another Oscar nomination. And the movie ended up being a box office hit. It's what used to be called a sleeper hit. You don't hear the phrase as much now because everything is on social media. There are smaller independent films, but it's just not the same thing. When a movie was called a sleeper hit circa 1991, it meant that given the budget, even the pedigree of an Oscar-winning actor and a home run hitter in Elizabeth Perkins, and Mandy Patinkin, another home run hitter. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Christine Lottie, awesome. The budget was only $10 million. And it was the kind of film that could have been perceived as arty and maybe just play in limited release. And, we'll just see what happens. Maybe we can make back our production costs. But the film grossed $38 million in the United States alone. Now, the math, the accounting aspect, if a movie grosses 3 times its budget, that's really good. This movie did better than that because in the pre-internet era, word of mouth was hugely important. It wasn't just critical reviews. And this movie, it's certified fresh. And I would say that the Rotten Tomato score in the 70s is not high enough. It should be in the 80s. It is a brilliant film. It does so many things right. As I say, though, the movie was a success. I still feel like it's underrated by history and underseen. And it's the kind of movie that it hits so many of the right notes, you don't have to like doctors. It almost works better if you don't like doctors because you get to see an asshole doctor get his comeuppance and actually do something with it. Sleeper hit, 38 million box office gross, and a lot of word of mouth. People were talking, like my dad, like his lady friend, told all of her friends, you won't believe how good this movie is. And this is another on a long line of movies that I constantly recommend to people. It's that good. I don't know anybody who has watched it, let's say in the last 10 years, who didn't say, wow, what a fucking movie. I laughed, I cried, that kind of thing. There are moments that are just, that really almost take your breath away, that you're not expecting to say, wow, holy shit, this is so good. And William Hurt at the center makes you believe. And this is the era, William Hurt, that if you could reboot The Matrix and recast Bonfire of the Vanities. When my dad read that book, and when there started to be rumblings that Hollywood was going to make a movie, I was only about 15. Dad said, they got to get William Hurt to play Sherman McCoy. That's the actor my dad saw when he read the book twice before the movie came out. I don't know if William Hurt was in the conversation. He was busy. It might have been offered to him or not offered to him. I don't know. So again, he was on just about the top of the mountain, having had the Best Actor Oscar and the 3 Oscar nominations. Bonfire of the Vanities movie was probably always going to suck, but he would have been a better choice than Tom Hanks because the character as written of Sherman McCoy is very close to how William Hurt, even though he's not a doctor in Bonfire of the Vanities, he's a bond trader, but he has the patrician condescension Sherman McCoy has in Bonfire of the Vanities, what Jack McKee has as we meet him in this movie. He's too high on the hog, and he needs to be taken down a couple of pegs. It's a brilliant performance in a fantastic film, which is, unfortunately, not free on any streaming service. It's the usual $2 or $2.50 on Amazon Prime. I give it my absolute highest recommendation. And again, I'm pretty sure anyone under 40, it's very unlikely. Well, certainly anyone under 35, it's unlikely that if you're under 35, you've seen it. It never got enough push, and it's never been on Netflix to my knowledge, because that's how movies, older films, can suddenly gain traction. I remember a couple of years ago that U.S. Marshals, the sequel to The Fugitive with Tommy Lee Jones and a still young Robert Downey Jr., a 24-year-old movie, suddenly was number 1 on Netflix because a whole generation of people who love Robert Downey Jr. like, I didn't even know he was in this movie. I didn't even know this movie existed. This is pretty good. So The Doctor is the kind of film that if it landed on Netflix, it probably would climb the charts in certain territories because a lot of people would be looking at it for the first time and saying, this looks really cool. This looks really interesting. It is both. The 16th entry in our ongoing series of the best movie you've never seen. Randa Haynes' 1991 drama. A couple of comedic beats. The Doctor, starring William Hurt, Christine Lottie, and Mandy Patinkin. And Adam Arkin, I should point out. This has been episode 176 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Saturday evening here with me in New York. If you caught this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 177 real soon. Till then, peace.